Welcome back to Copper Star Precision, the channel dedicated to helping you score more points. Part of scoring more points is having the right ammunition. As we know, lot testing is extremely important when it comes to the small bore competitive sports. So as you could probably tell from the thumbnail and title of this video, we are taking the Genesis action to the Laupa Test Center here in Mesa, Arizona. So I'm going to hand it over to Ryan, and he's going to explain how things are done.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Ryan Spoonhour. I run the Laupa Rimfire Performance Center in Mesa, Arizona. Here, we're testing a new Genesis action today, and we're going to go through the testing process and see what kind of results we get. So we have a few different ways we can test the rifle. We can either test it in the stock, where we clamp the stock in the vise that we have, or we can take it out of the stock and put it into an action block specifically for whatever rimfire action you have. So this is a Remington 700 pattern action block, so this will fit all the Voodoos, Remexes, the Genesis, a bunch of the other actions too that are coming out. And the third way we can test is we can put a track plate adapter on here and run it into a one-piece rest, similar to what people use in bench rest competitions. This way we allow the gun to reciprocate and return to battery after each shot, and it runs in a ball bearing track with a return to battery spring. So we have a few different options.
And you guys got every single
pretty much
rifle pretty much covered. There's a I know there's a list on the website, but
yep.
Either way, do you find one way is better than the other?
Not really. So some guns will shoot differently sized groups, testing, say, in the action block versus the stock. However, at the end of the day, the lot that shoots the best will be the one that shoots the best regardless of how you test it. So we've confirmed, with our own testing with a bunch of different rifles that we have both here and in the East Test Center, we can test the gun all three different ways, and we'll get slightly different size groups. However, the best one's always the best, the second one's the second best, and so on and so forth. And I think kind of a misconception about the test center is that we're not necessarily here to give you the absolute smallest groups, although we do a really good job of that. We're here to give you the most fair comparison lot to lot. So it doesn't really matter if your group is a 14 millimeter or a 14 and a half. If it's still 2 millimeters better than the next best, you got yourself a winner. So
awesome. And then you guys here at Laupa at the test center, you guys are going to test Center X, Midas, and XAC, depending on what you have available, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want, say, just Center X tested, we can do just Center X. If you want all three, we can do all three. We have a little bit of flexibility that way. So.
And those lots that you guys have here, they're not available to the public. They're set aside or specifically designated for the test center, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So the lots that you test here won't be available on any of our retailers' websites. The only way you can have access to them is through the test centers. That way we can manage our inventory and make sure it doesn't get sold out during testing. And
they're not like cherry picked. You just You just call up the factory and say, hey, we need Center X or we need Midas Plus, and they send you whatever comes off the line. And those are designated for the test center.
Yep. So when a new container gets this brought into the country, a certain number of them we get a set aside, and those lots we get a sample of those sent here for testing, and the rest stay in our warehouse in Missouri to be shipped to you after testing.
And whatever is available here for testing, it's guaranteed that there's a case available for you to purchase. Yeah. So it's not like you find this magical lot and it's like, oh, guess what, we're sold out. So you're only going to test stuff that's available for
exactly.
Purchase. Awesome. Is it still, I know you have to buy a minimum of one case, which is 5,000 rounds. Is there a one case limit still due to supply?
Yeah, exactly. So we have a one case per shooter policy. So it's not one case per rifle, it's one case per shooter. So if you bring in two rifles, I'm happy to test both of them. If you're the only shooter, if it's your gun A and gun B, I can only sell you one case. But the reason we do that is to make sure I have enough supply for everyone on the wait list. We have a pretty extensive wait list. Here in Arizona, we have about a 9-month wait. Ohio is about 15 months. So we have thousands of people on the wait list between the two centers. We need to make sure we manage our inventory so everyone gets their chance. I'd love to sell 2 or 3 cases per shooter, but then the wait list would be 3 times as long. So.
Right. And then if you're not here locally, you're going to be shipping your rifle. So when you get on the wait list and then you get a call maybe a couple weeks out, and then you ship your rifle or coordinate with you guys. Your rifle's not sitting here for 9 months waiting to be tested.
Yeah, exactly. So you can do either in person or mail in. Either way, I'll send you an email once you're added to the list, and then when we're about 3 weeks out, I'll give you a call. You can schedule either in person or mail in. Essentially, you bring your gun to the local FFL of your choice. They mail it out to us, and then I have it for 2 to 3 weeks, and then I send it back to the FFL it came from. So about 50% of the rifles I test are mail-ins.
And it's not just the NRL 22 PRS rimfire guys. You guys do bench rest shooters, you guys do Olympic shooters.
Yeah, everyone. If you're hobbyist and you just like to shoot in your backyard, we do that too. I've tested everything from $200 rifles to $15,000 rifles. Everything you could do.
I think that covers it. Let's get this rifle tested and see how it goes.
Awesome, that works.
All right, Ryan, so we've got the rifle set up. This is the sort of fixture you were talking about with the return to battery. Standard kind of a one-piece rest top that you would see in the bench rest competitions.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're ready to start testing. What's really cool, and I'll have detailed pictures of the results of the groups up here, but when you take the first shot, it's going to basically center on that shot, right?
Correct. Yeah, so it centers the group, and because the group's only one round at the beginning, it centers that. You'll see that the red shot is the most recent, and then the green rounds are all the previous, and then there will be a red outline showing the outermost diameter of the group. Now, like I said, it centers the group on this target. What you're really shooting through is essentially an empty window screen, and the window screen has lasers all the way around it, and it detects where the bullet is and records it, wherever it may lay in the screen, and then it centers itself on the target, quote unquote, the bullseye. So this screen shows you where your shot is in relation to the whole screen, and then this screen shows you where it is in relation to each other on a target.
And if you wanted to get something else, you could change that target, right? Those are just this, I guess, standard Olympic targets.
Yeah, so we have a 50-meter target on the left, 100-meter target on the right. The 50-meter standard frame is an ISSF 50-meter, like what they use in the Olympics for three-position small bore. The 100-yard target, or the 100-meter target, is actually a 50-meter pistol target, but the reason we use that is they're in 1-inch denominations for the X and 10 range, so it's a good frame of reference for, bench rest guys, but also for PRS shooters and guys like that.
Right, and then when you get the results, is it going to be center to center, mean radius, edge to edge?
Sure, yeah, so we usually measure outside to outside. The reason we do that is because it's a little bit more accurate when you have lasers doing all the work for you. You can find the circle in which encompasses, the smallest circle which encompasses all the shots is essentially what outside to outside gets you. And we also measure mostly in millimeters, however we can do inches. The reason we do millimeters is the targets will record down to the 100th of a decimal place. 100th of a millimeter is a lot smaller than 100th of an inch, so it gives us a little bit more fine-tuning in looking at the results. However, if you do want it in inches, I can switch to that as well.
Awesome. And then these are the lots we're testing over here.
Yeah, so we have Center X, Midas, and Exact. We're going to do all three today just to kind of show you what some of the differences may be. Now, Center X doesn't necessarily mean, or Midas doesn't necessarily mean it'll perform better than Center X, and Exact doesn't necessarily mean it'll perform better than Midas. What happens is after a lot is done being made, it gets tested and evaluated at the factory in Germany, where all the ammo is produced, and then it gets determined price-wise from there. So it goes Center X and then Midas Plus and then Exact. Now, it's just how it did out of the guns in Germany. It doesn't necessarily mean how it's going to do here. We might get Center X that does better than Exact. We might get, Exact that does better than Midas. We don't know until we test it, which is kind of one of the reasons why lot testing is so important. Typically speaking, the higher end ammo will shoot better, but it's not a guarantee.
And so comes off the line, all comes off the same line in Germany.
Yep.
It's evaluated there, and then there's some proprietary criteria where they use to sort into the different groups of ammo.
Yep.
And then, like you said, it depends what matters in your rifle, not necessarily what's
Correct.
on the box, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah, exactly.
so we have great, we have better and best according to the factory. But it's really whatever your rifle likes, and having the ability to test all three is absolutely phenomenal. When you look for group sizes, here's another question that a lot of people ask. Is it better to have a rounded group, like a group that is more circular, or if it's really small but you see vertical or horizontal stringing, is there a preference?
You talk to different people, you get different answers. The number one criteria for me is group size. I don't necessarily care if it's circular or stringing a little vertically. If it's smaller, that's better. It really just depends on the shape of the group, though. If it's really stringing vertically, it's not going to be ideal. Whereas if it's just a little bit more vertical than horizontal, that's a little bit better. So it just really comes down to the individual results that we get. We'll get some vertical groups that will initially just knock right off the bat. It's not interesting just because of how much vertical there is, but we might get some who are just a little bit vertical, and that's definitely not something to rule out that lot. And I think a lot of people exaggerate how much stringing is going on in a group, especially when you're doing, say, 5-shot groups. What we're going to do here today is 10 shots for every lot, and then the best lots will get 20. So 20 shots is a large sample size, and you really see a lot of the times what may look like a stringing group vertically at 10 rounds or 5 rounds is not at 20. So usually they all end up more or less circular.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a big question with all the statistics keyboard warriors out there who talk about group size. So we're going to test 10 rounds, and then because the group is not going to get any better per se, it's going to be still the two widest shots, and then if anything shows promise, we retest that later with 20 round groups just to get a full aggregate of that lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, there's down the tunnel 100 meters, there's 2 infrared screens. Simultaneously, they'll capture both the 50 meter and 100 meter. So,
so the bullet doesn't hit anything at 50 meters. It doesn't hit anything at a 100 meter target. It goes a few yards beyond and then hits our bullet trap. So it doesn't impact anything. It just goes straight through, and the lasers record where it went. So.
All right, well, let's get the testing underway, and we'll see what kind of groups the Genesis action can produce.
Awesome. Sounds good.
So Ryan, we just got done testing the Genesis rifle. What are we looking for? Obviously group size, but what are the other metrics you help determine what's maybe the best option for this specific rifle?
Sure, yeah. So our target system gives us a lot of data. It can be kind of overwhelming if you just look at the screen and see all these numbers. But like Cyrus said, one of the main factors is group size. So we see the diameter max right down here. So at 50 meters, this 10-shot group was 13.84 millimeters. At 100, this 10-shot group was 26.21. That's fantastic. At 50 meters, I've seen many bench rest guns and limited class single-shot rifles do that well. That's actually better than a lot of them. At 100, 26.2 is also phenomenal. Typically speaking, for a rifle like this, if I can keep it under 30, I'm really happy. So we can also look at the score. Now the score is based on this target that we're shooting at, which is at 50 meters is a 50-meter Olympic target. Doesn't mean a whole lot to a whole lot of people, but a higher number the better. A higher number is telling you have more shots closer to the center of the group. So you can have two shots, or you can have two groups that were both 13.8 millimeters, but one of them has a lot of shots near the center and then a few around the outside, and another one will have them going all around the outside. Obviously you want the one with more shots closer to the center. That's what that score is telling you. We also can look at the DHH. That's this number right over here in this top column. That stands for a distance hit to hit. So that is like the DHH mean, that is the average distance to the next consecutive round. So out of these 10 rounds, it figured out how far away the next round is from the previous and all of those, and then it averages it to 4.48. So a bullet's width is 5.6 millimeters. So what this is telling you is you're more than overlapping your previous round with your next round on average. You can also see like your DHH max. So that's the farthest any two consecutive rounds were from each other. Obviously you want to keep that as small as possible. You don't want them shooting, this shot and then back over here. You want it to follow some sort of pattern where they're closer together. So there's a bunch of different numbers we can look at. We do have chronographs built into the target system, so we don't currently have a way to calculate muzzle velocity. However, we do have chronographs built in so we can see our 50-meter velocity and our 100-meter velocity, so you can see the extreme spread of that and figure out if that's within the acceptable range of whatever you're doing with this rifle and ammo combo.
And so because those are sort of the Olympic targets, we're talking decimal scoring.
Yes. So a perfect shot would be 10.9. And then every decimal after, like a 10.8, would be 0.8 millimeters from the center. A 10.7 would be 1.6, a 10.6 would be 2.4, and so on. So right here on average, your average shot was a 10.6, which is really good. So this circle right here is the X ring. If it's just barely touching that circle, that's 10.3, and then if it's within that circle, or if it's closer in, that's a higher and higher value. So your average shot was more than halfway into overlapping this 0.2 inch X ring.
And for things like we do with NRL 22 or PRS rimfire, all we have to do is hit the target.
Right.
Whereas a bench rest shooter might be worried about sort of edge to edge, especially if it's best line scoring.
Yeah.
So you have ways to break it down for anybody. And then Olympic shooters, obviously, you want to be as close to that 10.9 as possible.
Right. Well, even for NRL, say, look at this 100-yard group or 100-meter group, for example. This 10 ring is 2 inches. Okay. So if you have a group that's 26 millimeters and it's fairly evenly spaced like this is, you can get a really good wind call. If you get an impact on target and it's right there, you know exactly, okay, that's center of the group. You know that your next shot can have the same wind call as before. Whereas if you get a lot of shots around the outside, you might not know if that's the left side of the group or the right side of the group. That might affect what your next wind call is going to be.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut back in here so we can talk about some of the results. I know it's kind of difficult to see on the screen, but they provide you a printout and an explanation of everything that's going on. So I have those documents, so let's go over them. First, they have this excellent chart about how to read the Performance Center results. So if you're someone who's mailing in your rifle, I'm not sure if Ryan will call you and walk you through it, or you can, pretty much follow this chart, figure everything out for yourself. But really, things that we want to look at here are, all these different statistics that you have going on. Dmax, we talked about the distance, the maximum distance between the furthest two shots. That's outside edge to outside edge. So it's not center to center like a lot of people are used to. And then we've got, the DAHH mean, which is the distance hit to hit. So on average, each shot in this example scenario was 5.33 millimeters apart. And, in freedom units, you have to remember that that's going to be, a 22 caliber bullet is 0.224 inches, which is 5.69 millimeters. So in this example here, the DHH mean of 5.33, that means each shot is within its, touching its neighboring shot on average, which is great. You have two different groups here. You'll see the 10-shot group, and then if it's a promising lot, there'll be a second 10-shot group, and then an aggregate 20-shot group. So it actually combines and overlays those two groups onto each other. You'll see the different distances for each and the combined distance down here. And then there's kind of the scoring chart, which you was talking about. So a 10.9 is going to be a perfect score. And you kind of want to see this downward sloping trend that's indicative of a good group, which means that most of the shots are clustered in this area here towards the center of the target, and fewer of the shots are sort of at the edges of the target. So most of these shots in this example were clustered, towards the center of the bullseye, which is great. So this is just the example that they give you. We can actually look at some real data, and we'll start off with the worst performing group. All right, so we're going to jump into the worst lot of the day. It was this lot of Center X, and really it was only terrible because of this flyer right here. Nice little clustering of the group. It's just this one flyer. So as you can see, first 10-shot group showed a lot of promise. Nice little 13.35 millimeter group, which translates to a 0.302 inch center to center group. So in the very, very low 0.3s. And then we came back to this lot, tested the next 3 rounds. That third round flew way out here, and we said, nope, not good enough. But other than that, this was the worst lot of the day. So because of this flyer, this 13-round total group expanded out to 22.81 millimeters, which is over an MOA. But really, if it wasn't for that flyer, this would have been a huge contender. This was the worst lot of the day, and really it was only because of that flyer. So from worst to best was this lot of Midas Plus, and very, very tight group here. And what's nice is that over the span of this 10-round group, after cycling through all of the options and going back and testing this second 10-round group, we can see that the group size, this 13.91 and 13.84 edge to edge, outside edge to outside edge, extremely, extremely similar, right? We also see this graph is almost like textbook perfect, downward sloping. the majority of the shots, 10 of them are right in that 10.8, 10.7 scoring ring, and it starts to taper off. So the vast majority of shots are concentrated towards the center of the target. We can also see a very, very low distance hit to hit, 4.37 millimeters. It's important to note that the width of a 22 caliber bullet, 22 LR, is 0.224 inches, which is 5.69 millimeters. So this means that distance hit to hit, on average, your bullets are touching each other where they're scoring on the paper. So absolutely phenomenal overall. When we combine these two groups, it does widen up a little bit. So your Dmax here, 15.01 millimeters. What does that translate to? Let's see. I have a little chart that I converted everything. So that's going to be combined 20 shot group, 0.367 inches or 0.64 MOA. But each individual one of these 10 round groups is going to be 0.57 MOA and 0.56 MOA, both at 50 meters, which is about 54-ish yards, 55 yards. So what's important to note is, this is like a textbook, fantastic lot of ammunition. You've got this nice big 20 round group, but what really interests me is kind of like this 10 round groups, right? And this kind of goes to the importance of sample size testing. You can test 3 round groups or 5 round groups, but think about what we do on stages, right? Stages are usually 10 to 12 rounds. So these 10 round groups are kind of giving us a good indication of the performance over a course of fire on a stage. 10 rounds, the 20 shot aggregate, those higher round count, 12 round stages and above, kind of gives you a nice little idea of what this rifle system and ammunition combination with Midas Plus is capable of. Now, the rest, of course, is up to you, taming your wobble zone, getting stable on the barricade, and making good wind calls. But this just goes to show that this rifle ammo combination, this system, is absolutely capable of absolutely hammering targets. So let's jump to the 100-meter version of the same exact lot of ammunition. So same exact 2 10-shot groups. Obviously, this dispersion is going to get a little bit bigger at distance. But again, we kind of see that downward trend, a lot of shots clustered towards the center of the target. And what's really nice about this 20-shot aggregate group here is that if you look at this area right here, this inner circle is 1 inch at 100 meters, which is about 109 yards. So think about, because we're not scoring for actual points scores, it's either an impact or a miss. It doesn't matter where you hit it on the target, as long as we hit the target. So even this little guy, right, from the first 10 round group that kind of fell out at 100 yards, probably a slightly lower velocity round, that's this guy down here in the aggregate. As you can see, it still clips the edge of that 1 inch target at 109 yards. So might be a skim packed, but if you do everything right, in terms of wind calls and all that kind of stuff, you're still going to hit the target given this data. So this 1 inch circle, imagine, usually we have a 3-inch target at 100 yards. So 109 yards, 1 inch target, right? So this rifle system and ammunition combination is completely capable of going 20 for 20 on a 1 inch target at 100 yards. Obviously, environmentals, wind, all that kind of stuff has to be taken into consideration. But under ideal circumstances and ideal condition, 20 for 20 on a 1 inch target at 109 yards, pretty phenomenal performance if I do say so myself. So we can quickly scroll through some of these other targets here. Just so you know, I'm not cherry picking data. So we've got different lot of Midas Plus here, decent sized group, couple little guys on the outside. This is another promising one that got the 20 round treatment. Just didn't kind of show that nice, super tapered score graph. Definitely a good group in its own right, just not as good, right? So there was an excellent group, and this is what I would consider probably a great group, just not as good as the other one. And then we got a couple others here. Here's another 10 round group. As you can see, I mean, they're just absolutely clustered around this area here. This is I think the best group here, again, with that nice little graph that we see. Here's another one, got 20 rounds, Midas Plus, a little bit bigger dispersion, nothing crazy, but had one super tight group. Look at that, 12.77, 10-shot group, and then there's the first group that kind of opened up the aggregate group a little bit. Same kind of story here, really tight first group, opened up in the second group, took 6 shots, said, okay, that's enough. I've seen enough. We've got better ammo to test. These are a couple X-Act, so super expensive ammunition doesn't necessarily mean better out of your specific rifle. It does meet the quality standard threshold set by Laupa at their factory, out of their barrels. We saw some stringing here, a little flyer here, but even so, I mean, look, this is only a 5-round group, but still not terrible in terms of distance. Kind of a little bit of vertical stringing in this X-Act group, which we did shoot 20 rounds of. First group looked very promising. A little bit of vertical stringing in the second group, but as you can see, I mean, these clusters are just absolutely hammering, in the same zone. So, one little maybe flyer guy out there, but even so, like just, you know, these group sizes are absolutely tiny. Here was that worst group of the day with that hideous flyer outside there, but everything else was great. But if you have the choice between, a 20 round group where everything is like this with no flyers, you're going to go with that one. You can pour over this data for forever. I'm sure Ryan will explain to you his thoughts. You can come to your own conclusions and then decide what you want to go with. But we did spend, a little bit of time at the end being there in person, going over, comparing some of the better groups. Ryan giving his reasoning, and making a decision from there. So just, absolutely phenomenal performance across the board. Like I said, the worst group was this one, 22.81. It's going to be a 0.67 inch center to center group, or 1.1 MOA. So there was only one group that was greater than 1 MOA. Everything else was less than 1 MOA. And let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups in the 0.3s, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups in the 0.4s. So 0.3 inches center to center, between 0.3 and 0.4, and then between 0.4 and 0.5. So the vast majority of that, what is that? 11 out of the 16 odd lots tested were less than half an inch center to center out of this rifle. So phenomenal performance. We're going to kick it back to Ryan for some closing thoughts.
All right, Ryan, we're all wrapped up here. We've discussed the results. I think the customer here is going to walk away really happy with a nice case of ammo. Now, it doesn't come from here, so you're not going to leave with ammo. It's going to be ordered. It's going to be shipped to you. If you live in a state where you have to go through an FFL for ammo, it's going to go through that process. So you're not going to leave here with ammo today, but you're going to leave here with the confidence that you have, out of what was tested, the best possible ammo combination for your particular rifle. I just want to thank you and thank the Laupa Test Center, thank the Capstone Group for letting us film the experience. Any parting words for our viewers?
Yeah, I really appreciate you having the time to come out here and film the process, Cyrus. I think the biggest takeaway is just we're selling you a case of ammo, yes, but we're also selling you the confidence. So when you go to your next match, you're not second guessing yourself. Do I have the right ammo? Is my gun shooting well? How does it perform? You can just kind of let that go and focus on the process, and you're gonna get better results that way than focusing on whether or not you have the right ammo. So,
like I always say, it's gonna help you score more points.
There you go.
Ryan, thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was great seeing you again.
Great seeing you.
Yep.
And thanks again to the Capstone Group and Laupa here in Mesa, Arizona for letting us film. And we'll catch you in the next one.
I just wanted to wrap up here with some thoughts of my own. And honestly, when it comes to today's day and age, the difficulty of finding match ammunition obviously is felt by a lot of people. And then you run the gamble, right, of just picking random lots of ammunition and seeing if your rifle likes it. But I want to talk about some of the value proposition that the Laupa Test Center offers. Yes, the wait list is long, but if you get on the wait list, which I recommend everyone go sign up now, hopefully 9 months to a year from now in the Mesa Test Center, you'll get a phone call from Ryan or an email, and you'll be like, hey, your rifle's ready for testing. But this is how I kind of break down the numbers. I have some numbers written down here. So the fee to test your rifle, I believe, is still only $50, which is an insane value for money. If you just look at what we tested, it was like 8 lots of Center X and 6 lots of Midas and 2 lots of X-Act. That's like over $300 in ammo. If you were to do that test yourself, you had to buy 1 box of each lot. If you could even find that many different lots of ammunition, that's over like $300 in ammo that you would have to spend to do this kind of thing yourself. And you're not going to necessarily have the same repeatable setup that the test center has. Even if you just look at the ammunition that we shot at the test center, you're probably going to need around 200 rounds, because it's 16 lots 10 shot groups. Some we gave up early, but let's just call it an average 10 rounds each. So that'd be 160 rounds. A couple of them got another 10 rounds on top of that. So let's call it 200 rounds. Even if you're just to do that, that'd be over $100 in ammunition if you just had magical lots of ammunition that were all, a box of 50, but there's only 10 rounds from 5 different lots, which obviously doesn't exist in the real world. We already spent $100 in ammo anyway. Now, yes, at the end, if you do find something you like, there's no obligation to buy a case. But if you do buy a case, it's a large upfront cost. But a case is 5,000 rounds, and the way I kind of break it down is I take, you set aside of the 5,000 rounds, take 200 rounds set aside for testing. So after you went to the test center and you buy a case, you get the case, take 200 rounds. That's, your zeroing rounds, your dope collection rounds, finding out your BC, all your corrections downrange, take it out in different temperatures, all that kind of stuff. So set aside 200 rounds. That leaves you 4,800 rounds. If you shoot 2 matches a month at 100 rounds each match, so you're going through 200 rounds a month, that is 2 years of matches for one case. So you shoot a year, you call up Ryan or send them an email again, get on the wait list for a year out, and by the time you run out of ammo, you're back at the test center testing another 16 odd lots of ammo, and you can repeat that process. So if you can afford the upfront costs, and I know, it is a big upfront commitment, and you kind of want to pick and choose which rifle you want to go with. Obviously, it's probably less, if you're shooting production or base class or anything like that, it might not be for you. But if that's your passion and you've got the funds, I mean, it's a great way not only to find out what your rifle likes, to be able to actually secure 5,000 rounds of ammo, which is obviously very difficult to do in this day and age, just to find that quantity of match ammunition. And I mean, like I said, a case will last me anywhere between 2 and 3 years of competition. So I think the value, if you can afford it, is absolutely phenomenal. Just the value of Ryan's time and the ammunition used during the testing period is well above and beyond the $50 you spend to get your rifle tested. So with that said, wearing a different hat, because very special episode. Again, huge shout out to the Capstone Group for letting us film in there. There's a lot of government contract stuff in there, so we're not allowed to film certain areas. But we were allowed to film the test center. Thank you, Ryan, for being a great friend, fellow competitor, and just awesome, advocate for the sport. I know it's his job, but I know he's also extremely passionate about it, and he gives the same care and attention to every rifle that comes through the test center. So get on the waiting list and get yourself a case of phenomenally tested match ammunition, and then go spend the next 2 to 3 years competing your heart out. That's all I have for this one. Until I see you next time, as always, score more points.